We're out here getting beta cucked. The backstory to it all is finally here. We get the dirty deeds from Raculus himself. Though some of it kinda still retcons previous statements, but they're just trying to make it work with the still obvious levels of information that we've been calling for months. However, was the delivery as impactful now that we know the details? We'll see as we take a quick look at the first KingOhger of 2024. Raculus's father, who looks an awful lot like the founder of Shugadam, seems to have a case of tuberculosis. So, knowing that his time is short, he gives Raculus all the info on Dagdad ahead of time, and just how he plans to overthrow him. Step 1, get cocked. Oh, I'm not even joking on that one. He asks Dagdad for power and gets his wife's black hole so spread that Jesus Hasti gets conceived. That would make Raculus's dad, "You are nuts!" And though Gira being born caused his mom to die and all that other bad stuff, and apparently being born the harbinger of doom, he is also kept secret from society. Rainbow Jujuria? Yeah, it's King-Ohger Soul. We've called it. We've been calling it for months. But it's the first of many planned soul consumptions, which ended up affecting him like a bad case of Arby's.
We'd like to take a moment to announce that.
So much so that Boshamar Classic tries to help, but is ambushed by Kamajim in disguise. But what would so many Shoe-God souls leave Gira with? The ability to become one himself, while losing his memories in the process, and being a blank slate, meaning anyone can just have him take orders. Raculus couldn't take his little bro just being another tool and had him sent off to an orphanage. It's kinda weird. Okay. We'll touch on that one later. Causus gets ambushed by Grody and Kamajim after there's some suspected rebellion being sowed. Luckily for Causus, the diseased blood hits the blade just enough to get him to transform into Okawaga to Ohger. Why? And die shortly after. Now, on the B-plot of things, though the other kings were listening to the details, Duga reaches out to Gira as there's time shenanigans afoot, with old people being old, teens being babyfied, and the kids being given voter registration IDs. Oh yeah, and the 20-somethings going back to kindergarten. Why is that? Because Minongon is running the show in Dagdad's absence. It's okay though, because even though Dagdad is an eternal being that can bend the laws of space and time, the ability to slay immortals that was given to the Ohger Caliber Zero was able to be replicated and implemented in everyone else's weapon. I'm sorry, what? Either way, the kings are warped into being 10 years old again. Yes, even Deboski. That's right, y'all. This is 10-year-old Deboski. Each agrees, kids. Each slash brings each king back through puberty, with Gira going through the revelation that he did eat King-Ohger's soul, allowing them to slice Minongon only.
Here's Johnny.
But no, it was Dagdad himself inside all along, vowing to step his game up next time. All this while Raculus asks that everything he said gets struck from the record so that he can continue to go down as the worst king ever. And though clearly guilty, they ain't about to let this man just die. Nah, we gotta redeem him with community service. Bros finna hug? Nah. Reading time! It's the long-awaited backstory, and although it had some emotional sting to it towards the end, there were a few things that felt a little bit unsatisfactory for me. Though, that's not to say that the episode wasn't good, it just wasn't perfect. As such, this episode is still getting the Abba Ranger A! Within the context of this episode, Draculus explains that shortly before the Fury of the Gods, he had Gira sent to an orphanage in order to hide him. But who did the hiding? Duga wasn't shown in the flashbacks, so he likely came aboard after the coronation. Boshamar may have been the one doing the hiding, but at the same time, wouldn't he have just been Kamajin by this point? Draculus could have gone and sent Gira off himself, but also wouldn't people have recognized the prince out in public? This would have been ample time to have a tie-in with the film Adventure Heaven as well, as the person that I suspect actually did do the deed would have been Devonica. After all, she was already aware of Gira's lineage at the orphanage, so they could have at least used a nice line in here to give us some sort of callback to that. Though, with that being said, my biggest issue with this episode is really the line by Yanma, that he was able to replicate the powers of the immortal slaying abilities and implement it into the other Ohger calibers. Sure, that's cool now that everyone has the ability and it's not solely on Gira or Draculus, but making such an ability get replicated, that just quickly kills some of the stakes. Think about it. Now they don't have to risk themselves in order to use that short-lived power-up that we had with the nice little CG appendages. Also, if they can just keep replicating it, can't they just program it into the shoe gods as well? It's also like, okay, you could do this the whole time, so why couldn't you also replicate the abilities of the crown so everyone could get those nice sleek gold forms? Shouldn't this immortality code be harder to replicate than that? Especially since we know that Yanma can replicate weapons. Remember the King-Ohger caliber? He made a second one. I get it. They need some way to boost up the team, and they need to get it in stat with no increase to the production budget. But this just ain't it. To at least have upped up the ante a little bit, I would have just had them remove the hasty bloodlock that the Ohger Caliber 0 has, so they could at least all just freely wield it. The Kuwagan Soul aspect of things finally got confirmed, but it also looked like it became a potential seed plant, because Gira only ate the one soul, but the goal was to have him eat so many to essentially become a shoe god himself. This goes back to an earlier scene a few episodes back showing Gira's face on the King-Ohger. It makes for a good foreshadowing of what this could mean. Gira is now probably strong enough to reject the memory loss side effects, but essentially take in the other shoe god souls so he can in turn become the King-Ohger. Or rather, a shiny new one that Bandai will be able to sell us at a premium of a cost. Remember that one-off gold Dan Oni Taijin? Yeah, I'm thinking that, except same shit, different season. As such, it wouldn't look as jarring if Gira, as the King-Ohger, fights Dagdead in multiple sizes and scales. But even then, they still have to first fully wipe out Mr. MNG, because it seems that so long as they stay fully intact, Dagdead will still continue returning as well, as he just houses more and more vessels for him to reincarnate into. But if Dagdead were smart, and given now that the kings know this little tidbit, I'd hide his ass somewhere off-world or somewhere that they just can't get him just in case. But that likely won't happen. Another thing, shouldn't Casus not be able to transform? Or at least not into Okawaga to Ohger? Because remember, Yanma made the suits, he learned that from Gin, and Gin learned that from Jeremy, while Draculus was copying all of Yanma's tech in the back end during his secret specials. So, none of this should have really been a thing. And instead, it should have just been a less skeletized, recolored version of Rainior's burial arms form shown in the movie. Once again, potential for some callbacks were all here, but it's like they forgot. See, tidbits like that would have really elevated this episode to being just pure peak. Because by now, of course, everyone has seen the film, especially us in the West, and we'd be able to go like, oh my god, really? Really? That's a deep cut. Y'all doing it. Y'all out here doing it. But they didn't do it. They didn't do it. See? Now I'm just telling y'all what could have been. And you're like, ah, shit, we could have had that, but we didn't. Though, with all that being said, I'm still not liking the Gira is Jesus allegory that we're getting now. As look, we just got done dealing with someone else becoming God in another show, Ace. So I'm like, this shit is just coming a little bit too soon. But Toei, like, the writers gotta stay grandiose with it. I will say this about the B-plot with them being kids. Though short-lived, it's poor timing that Rita wasn't there, as they were the only one to bear witness to Minangan's insights and probably could have warned them ahead of time. But I guess that scene really was more for us, the audience, than for the show itself. I did find the ending scene with young Raculus and Gira hugging to be emotional, but I would have preferred if adult Gira after the handshake just went in for the big ol' hug. This is what I was expecting, and sadly, we just did not get the full bro moment that I wanted. But anyway, those are my thoughts. What are yours? What did you think about this year's start to King-Ohger, the Cucking, the Jujuria, and the potential Shoe God Gira? Anyway, that's it from me. Until next time, bye.